Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name's Ben Pfeiffer, as always, doing another one of these Q&A mailbag type things that y'all always really seem to enjoy. And for my guest today, we have the one and only friend of the show, Ahmed Jama at Slip the Screen. It does great work at Swish Theory. If you follow the channel, you've probably seen him or heard his voice. Ahmed, how has your Tuesday been so far? How's it going?
It's been good, man. Kind of juggling a lot of different responsibilities as far as, doing some basketball work, my work that pays my rent, and then, just enjoying life.
For sure, man. I'm enjoying life as well. Like I told you, I have a rec league, my men's league. We've got our title game today in
Oh,
about
shoot.
4 hours. So hopefully,
Nerves?
hopefully I am nervous. I've been feeling the butterflies since about last night,
Okay.
and I feel good. I think we should win. We're the better team. We've beaten this team before.
Mm-hmm.
Just going to be a matter of stepping up to the plate and playing big in the big moments. So
Let's go.
so I'm excited for that. But yeah, as the title and everything says, I asked for a bunch of your hot takes on prospects, on the next draft, on high school, on young NBA players, and y'all came through with a bunch. So I have a ton of questions on our sheet, and we'll see how many we get through. If we don't get to your question, there's so many great questions that we're not going to get to. But anyways, Ahmed, without further ado, are you ready to get into this?
Let's hop into it, man.
Cool. So the first question, thought we'd start at the tippy top, from at I have no idea. DUYDIDT.
It's the most confusing combination of letters I've
Just
seen.
don't want to totally butcher your name. They say AJ Dybantsa is the best offensive prospect in the last decade. So Dybantsa, I feel like it's been kind of a draft Twittery thing to fade him as this undisputed top guy in next year's class. Both Ahmed and I have been on the record about having different guys ahead of him. So we both we both stand on the same side. But I wanted to entertain this because I think it's interesting. Like, what if, let's say, we look back on Dybantsa in 15 years and he ends up as like, oh yeah, he was always that guy on the offensive end. What are the kind of signals that you think would maybe point towards that, him developing into something that, you and I and a lot of other smart people who we talk to all the time don't really foresee at this point?
So, what signals we could see? What evidence there could be this year, like this season? I think how. Okay, yeah. I mean, he's always gotten to the line at a pretty decent clip. I think if that explodes this year, considering just how well structured that offense should be. I mean, Kevin Young's a great offensive coach, great coach in general, but a great offensive one especially. They were a top 5 offense last year, and that was after a slow start. Like, BYU was the best offense in the country for, I want to say, like, the new year, basically. Like, starting the new year and on, they were the best offense in the country, if not
It was
like
a crazy
second.
offense.
Yeah. And I mean, along with, the NBA scheme, they have a ton of spacing, just great, like, mixture of play finishers. So if AJ has this year, as far as like numbers, because that's the kind of person I am, I'm like, I want to see these AJ hit these like benchmarks. If he's like in and around that like like 55 to 60 plus free throw rate, I think that's going to kind of like set, which is a high bar. But if we're talking about the best offensive player, what would this guy say in the last decade, 10 years, if that's kind of the standard we're setting, then I need to see something like kind of special like that, like him just living at the free throw line.
For sure. I mean, when I think of best offensive prospects of the last 10 years, my mind's instantly like, very hard for me to imagine a world where he's better prospect offensively than Luka, or even like Cade,
or even the guy that went number 1 last year,
or Cooper. Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be. As we both talked about, probably underrated offensive prospect as number 1 pick forwards go. I do think, like you said, it's gonna have to be about the living at the line, the driving, the getting downhill. But that's kind of the thing with Dybantsa is like. I think he's pretty obviously special at that specific thing. Like, his first step for his size is absolutely stupid. The ability to kind of change his stride length, to just cover a ton of space. I think he's going to get to the line a lot at BYU. Kevin Young's offense, tons of pace and space, tons of spread pick and rolls, tons of closeout attacking opportunities. It's going to be a lot of what AJ could see in the NBA. But when we also talk about these like generational one-of-one offensive players, right? It's not just how can you create advantages and score the ball and put up points, right? It's how can you add value at the highest level? How can you be the same level of impactful on a team with a bunch of other superstars? And I think in the past for AJ, my answer to that question would be pretty firmly no. In terms of how he's able to. I mean, he was good in FIBA because I guess he wasn't even that good in FIBA by his normal standard. Like he, didn't score as much as he usually does, and obviously it's a stacked US team. That's just how these things go. But I think when it comes to Dybantsa's like sense for playing off the ball, he's improved as a passer over the last year or two for sure, but he's still not at the level of like a primary guy, in my opinion. And then I think the defense is going to be another thing, but I think the question was just talking about offensive prospects. So I'll leave that. But yeah, I struggle to see a world where he's really like in the playoffs at the highest level, on teams with other elite initiators, elite scorers, elite offensive players, adding as much value as he would on the team where he had the ball in his hand all the time. And if you're that guy, there's maybe like the 15, 20 guys in the last 25 years, right, who can really be that and lead high-level teams. Like, it's not to knock AJ. It's just, we're setting the highest possible bars. And especially when we compare him to players like Cam Boozer, and Darren Peterson, who have so many more of the additive skills. They're better off-ball players. They're better passers. They're better defensive players. It's just hard for me to see AJ as like a generational offensive prospect. But I do think he has pretty special qualities, even if like the whole package in total isn't like something I would consider the greatest I've ever seen.
Yeah, definitely agree on all counts.
For sure. So there's talking about AJ. We got a ton of questions about Mikquel Brown, point guard going to Louisville. So and a lot of them were most of them were generally being high on him. So we're going to group some of them we got together. If you asked a question about Mikquel, then this is where that discussion is living. So at John Similin 8606 said, Mikquel Brown goes number 2 in the draft next year. So behind whoever you'd like of those three. At Adrian Bouchout, I don't know, Bouchout number 1, apologies again, says Brown will be the 3rd pick in the draft. And there were a bunch of kind of echoes of this sentiment. So are we buying this Brown hype as, a top 3 guy in this loaded draft all of a sudden? I can see by your face. For anyone who's listening, who's just watching, what are your thoughts on the recent push kind of Brown up here with these prospects we've been talking about?
I think it's interesting, man. I think it's interesting people have been so taken by Mikquel. And it's always just, I mean, the draft space more than any is just subject to recency bias. He was the most recent of the elite prospects to play. So, a lot of people are going to have Mikquel Brown thoughts and, be extremely high on him. I know like a lot of the kind of bigger outlets as far as like college basketball and draft outlets were, ricocheted him up ratcheted him up the board. I know Sam Vecini and Adam Finkelstein had a podcast recently where they thought, we put him at 6, but that may have been too low judging off the FIBA performance. There's still a lot of questions I have for Mikquel. Obviously, it comes down to any guard, like initiator, any guard his size. Obviously, you want to see they're probably going to be limited defensively. You want to see just how stark those limitations are. And for Mikquel, I just want to see how effectively he's able to get downhill. He's just never been a quality rim pressure guard, and he doesn't have to be a good player, but to be in the areas that I think a lot of your listeners are considering, and even just decision makers, draft media people, he's going to need to place pressure on the rim somewhat consistently. And if you can't do that in a Pat Kelsey offense, then I'm going to have a lot of concerns. I'm going to have a lot of questions. I also just don't know if he'll necessarily be he's going to be featured. Mikquel is going to have the ball in his hands a ton, but to the extent that people would be willing to place him in the top 3 or 4 of the draft, I don't think so. One of the questions, I don't know if you mentioned, was Louisville having 2 guards drafted in the lottery.
We'll get to that. Yeah.
Okay. That was one that someone had presented, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I do think the idea of rating the Louisville backcourt is correct generally. Ryan Conwell's awesome. He's an awesome player. He'll probably have a cup of coffee in the NBA at some point. Adrian Woolley may have more than a cup of coffee later on in his career. But that's just to say, I don't know.
A whole venti matcha line.
Yeah.
According to one of our future take Smiths, but
yeah, but I just don't know if we're going to see Mikquel play true. They're going to play true Helio Mikquel, where he's putting up 30+ usage next season. But we'll see.
I agree with most of what you said. I'm probably higher on Brown than you in a vacuum, but still, I don't think top.
Is he your number one guard in this class?
If you count, I mean, I assume we're not counting Darren.
Yeah, that's okay. Non-Darren. I do think of Darren as a guard, but yeah, you're right. Non-DP division.
Probably. I'm not so crazy about the guards in this class that are non-Darren.
Neither am I, honestly.
Our guy Phylon is someone who I'm thinking about in that range. Sturts as well, but I have my issues with him too. Probably if you had to ask me today, but like if you ask me in 2 weeks, my answer might be different. But this is he's a great player, and I understand why people are high on Brown. I just think when we're talking about these special next level, these number one pick contenders, which I think the consensus is kind of that I think we both generally agree with, is that top 2 or 3 guys, regardless of the order they landed, we expect them to have the type of seasons where you can take this guy number 1 in an average draft and feel all right about it. I don't think Brown gets to that point, like you said, because of the paint pressure. That was always an issue with him. He shot better on layups and got to the rim a little bit more in his last AAU season than I remember, but it's still not like crazy high or anything. And you can clearly see he's like a shooting, playmaking, slanted player. And like he is a really exceptional shooter and playmaker.
Definitely, yeah.
It's just the bar that you have to get as shooters, and as he's tall as well, which I think is
you see what Louisville listed him at today?
Like, I did not. What do they list him at?
6'5".
Oh, he's not. He's not 6'5". He's probably 6'3.5", 6'4". I would guess. He's long. He's lanky. He can use his strides to get downhill. He can use his length to make plays on defense. Like there are definitely ways for him, but I think you saw, especially like last year. Last AU season and some of the games last year against real NBA athletes. Like in the game against Columbus, there were a couple of plays where it was just really tough sledding against Jackson Richardson. Which, like, fair enough. He's one of the most insane athletes in all of high school basketball. But like that's an NBA quality athlete, and there are better athletes in the NBA than Jackson Richardson, as great as Jackson is. But Mikquel, I think, if he ends up hitting a real star ceiling, it's going to be because he is a dynamic on and off ball shooter who obviously can hit pull-up threes, but you can run him off movement and use him off the ball in that way. And because he's just this surgical pick and roll passer, which I also think is kind of like there's some contingency on his driving. I think his best passes are his skip passes. Like he's so good with both hands, immediately picking up the ball, killing his dribble and flowing into a skip pass to the opposite way, which is just so impressive. But I do think he's not as great at passing these like tight window interior passes, which I think of as like the highest ceiling passing plays. But so like I don't think of him as like a Luka Trey level passer by any means, but he's very, very good. Don't get me wrong. And that's kind of like when I'm thinking about Brown and I'm thinking about a ceiling, also a bit older, he's going to be like, is he going to be 20 on draft night?
Yeah, he's April 06.
Which, if he goes crazy next year and if he looks awesome, that if he does dissuade all of our concerns, let's say he bulks up, shoots a bunch more at the rim than we think, whatever. But at the moment, I just have a hard time seeing. It's really hard for perimeter players in general to become stars without being potent drivers and slashers and interior creators. Let alone guys who you're projecting as point guards. And like you said, the rest of that Louisville guard room is going to be awesome. I mean, that team's going to be awesome, and there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed, which I think could honestly be good for Mikquel in the long term. Like he's going to have experience playing next to good players. He's obviously in FIBA, he looks great playing next to good players, but he hasn't at DME this past year. I don't think he had anyone like that crazy on his team, on his like team loaded teams. It's going to be good for him, I think, to get experience playing with Conwell and playing with Woolley, and playing with Hadley. And they have some pretty decent bigs. They have Khalifa, I know.
I can't remember if James Scott. I want to say he transferred, but I can't.
He's not listed on their roster.
Yeah. So he transferred.
Yeah,
which is kind of disappointing, man. I really liked him.
But anyways, Brown is going to have probably his best, most consistent supporting cast. So he'll have a chance to really prove, even as someone, like I said, who's probably relatively high on him, to prove me wrong in some ways. But who knows? At the moment, I'm not buying him as in the tier of AJ, of Boozer, Dybantsa, and Peterson. I think that says more about the top three than it does about Brown. Not just for Brown.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
For sure. And to follow this up, we had at George Font, as you alluded to, at George Font says, Louisville should have 2 guards drafted in the lottery next year. Everyone's in on Mikquel Brown Jr. for good reason, but Adrian Woolley had one of the best slashing/shooting seasons by a freshman in modern NCAA history and is only 5 months older, but no one talks about him. So I guess the hot take here is Woolley should be in the lottery. I think you mentioned that you don't agree with that at the moment. It's probably a little aggressive for me as well, but I understand it. I could see myself getting there if Woolley has the kind of season that maybe he could have. I think Woolley's defense was pretty damn good last year when I went back and watched 3 or 4 games last week or so preparing for this. Like, I was quite impressed with the way he defended it in a lot of the games. Like, he had some impressive possessions against both Ace and Harper in that Rutgers game earlier in the season. His hands are so active and he plays bigger than his size on that end. And he is a very good player on the ball, but I just don't know if he has enough juice off the dribble to be like a consistent on-ball guy. And I don't know if he's a good enough shooter to make up for it otherwise. So what is your general thought on Woolley heading into next season at Louisville?
I think he's a capable enough shooter. I just generally, and this is kind of a cop-out because it isn't really addressing so much of like Woolley as a player. I think I'm generally just going to be fading sophomores as like NBA prospects and moving forward. I think that's more so because of the college basketball landscape. I think of guys that I'm fairly high on that got lost in the shuffle of last year's stacked freshman class. Guys like Paul McNeil, for example. I feel like there's just an anchoring bias. They're going to be fighting an uphill battle as far as the anchoring of the NBA. Like, they'd have to so far and away exceed expectations to, I don't know, justify or to warrant a draft slot high enough to, outweigh the security provided by their NIL packages. I'm thinking about guys like Boogie Flan, for example, who it's funny. You definitely liked him a lot more than I did. And I feel like I've kind of like gone in the other direction, at least compared to consensus. I was like, Boogie was actually much better last year than I gave him credit for. But like guys like Boogie Flan.
Yeah, I feel like I went the other way too, which is funny.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I can't. It'd be really tough for, I feel like, Boogie to get working his way into a draft slotting that's secure enough to, turn down the money he's getting in Florida. Same with a guy like Paul McNeil. Honestly, potentially even the same with LeBaron. Although LeBaron was much more highly regarded as a prospect than the other 2 guys I'd mentioned. But I don't know.
At least getting first round plus last.
Yeah. And I think he probably would have gone in the first round had he declared, but probably just wanted to work his way higher. But all that to say, I don't really see Woolley kind of even declaring. I don't see him even kind of populating into the pool. So, yeah.
There is an interesting thing about how college basketball is trending and how that will impact draft player decision making. Because we've had examples like guys like Jaden Ivey and Tyrese Halliburton go back as sophomores and really ramp up their stock in kind of a higher usage situation. But again, like you said, lots of situations where players necessarily get lost in the shuffle and there's just other players that kind of take precedence. But Woolley, I do think, has a good chance. I think his visibility will be helped by the fact that he's playing with
definitely, Mikquel. And I think he can play off ball. I'm probably more. I'm more.
I think he's better off ball than he.
Yeah, definitely.
I think he's better off ball than he's on ball. I mean, he's an awesome like footwork creator. He's got great timing of like where to place his feet on spin moves and where to counter like aggressive closeouts with his feet. Like he is a phenomenal closeout attacker. I just think if you're going to project him as an on-ball guy in the league, I think that, like he's a good shooter, but I think you'd have to project him to be like a really excellent pull-up three-point shooter to really get there. And while I think he's a good one, and I think he will be a good one, and he's such an awesome driver. Like last year, 26 usage, 63 true shooting, 40, almost 45 free throw rate, over 170 attempts at the rim. Like incredibly proficient college driver, no doubt. I do want to see how that translates to power conference basketball. Like just played a very weak schedule overall last year. Not a lot of high major data points at all to really see. So I understand being confident on Woolley. I'm going to have Woolley in my first round before the season, but I won't probably have him in my lottery. But he's a guy who I could see it going either way with, who, if he had a real breakout, and I think there's going to be games where people turn into Mikquel Brown, turn into Louisville for Brown, and Brown isn't as good as Woolley, and they're like, oh shit, wait, who is this other guy? Like that's going to happen. But the question is just like, can it happen enough? I don't know. But I like Woolley. I think he's fun, and I respect the Heat regardless of the take.
Yeah, no, that was I like that one a lot. That was creative.
For sure. Let's go to our next, quote, I guess, set of questions. This is our last real set of questions. We have some other related questions, but just like we got a lot of questions about a certain Mikquel Brown being kind of underrated and should be talked about higher, we got a lot of questions about Nate Ament, who is going to Tennessee next year. He's a consensus top 4, top 5 guy, and most of the replies we got, we'll get into them. I listed a couple. At K to Duran 0 says Nate Ament, who's projected number 4 on Tankathon right now, will end up being drafted outside of the lottery. At Pete's Post Up says at Nate Ament is preseason top 10 guy who doesn't go in the top 20 when the draft comes around. And at the Essence 222 says, I am a believer in Nate Ament 100% at the NBA level, but I wouldn't be surprised if he kind of gets bullied in the SEC and ends up dropping out of the top 10. He'd be a huge value pick, though. So general kind of tempo from the audience, from the listeners, is fading Nate Ament. What are your thoughts on this overall?
I agree with that one. And I don't even know if it's necessarily a hot take. I mean, we've all watched Tennessee. We know it's not maybe the most progressive offensive context, if it's like a way to put it. And Ament, yeah, and I think of so much of the appeal with Ament is just how tailor-made his skill set is to being a complementary player, like a complementary wing. And we know guys like Jabari Smith, who I don't know actually where. I haven't took the temperature on him lately is in the public consensus, but he was panned for not, living up to, the next KD kind of billing that a lot of people would mistakenly give him. But he's proven, he just got paid. That's a valuable player. And I kind of put Nate Ament in that bucket where he's just going to be – he doesn't really have any glaring deficiencies in his game, even though I think if he's asked to create, which I kind of feel like he may be in this Tennessee team. I don't know who else outside of Jacoby Gillespie, who I love, who you will not – if there's a time to put plant my flag, I am the number one Jacoby Gillespie guy as far as in NBA draft circles. Yeah, but I do think Ament's going to be tasked to do a lot, and I don't know necessarily how it's going to look. He was not a good finisher last year in Adidas play. He was listed at 190, and the measurement I had, he's like around 6'10" in shoes. That's just uber skinny. Like that's beyond even like Jabari Smith when he was at Auburn. I think Jabari cleared 200 pounds fairly comfortably. Like I think he's just really going to struggle with SEC physicality, especially considering how much Tennessee plays in the half court.
220, which maybe was juiced up a little bit, but definitely heavier than the Mets for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I think considering like the pace they'll play at, how frequently they'll play in the half court, I think it could look ugly for Nate unless the shots really falling, which it could. His shooting. As far as like drawing the Jabari Smith parallels. At this stage, or at least going into their freshman year, Nate has been like better shooting credentials than Jabari did. I mean, 85% from the line his last year at Adidas, for over 40% on threes, on a good volume. He can really, really shoot it. But I do kind of, if I were to project the trajectory of Nate Ament, as prospect stock, I'd guess he falls closer to, back half of the lottery.
Cool. I'm glad you have this perspective because I'm very high on Ament, and I feel pretty solid having him as a top 5 guy. And I think it's for a lot of the reasons that you said. Like, I just think these tall shooters who are also like legit defenders, and Ament is a legit.
Yeah, I agree.
Really good on that end. Very long, athletic. I think he has a really good sense for like when to rotate down and block shots and how to use his length. Like, he's not particularly strong. Not particularly strong is a way to put it.
But he's physical.
That's what I was gonna say. He is very physical. He is really good at taking contact and initiating it, and he doesn't shy away from it. Issue is it just doesn't usually result in good things. But he has some really high quality traits. Like, his ability to guard down for his size is crazy because of his feet and his quickness. And like, I think you can project him to get better guarding up and guarding as a big, like you said, because he has that inherent physicality. Like, there's so many of these like skinny, shooty wing types who just don't want to take contact. They don't want to be physical. They don't want to rebound. They don't want to guard in the paint. They don't want to do it. And a lot of them never really get better at it. Like, it's a hard thing to improve at. But Ament has it. And then offensively, I agree there's a lot of potential downside this year at Tennessee that could impact his like. So I guess I agree. I do kind of agree with the idea that like this isn't a great situation for the way that he's perceived by the league. But I do still think, like, again, noting how rough the creation is going to be, like, and maybe I think he's going to be good on some like Chaz Lanieri, Admiral Schofield-y type of curl pin down actions that he's going to have some success on. And while he's certainly not a creator by any means, I don't think he's like so hopeless there in the long term. Like we said, he's willing to get low and be physical. He's willing to try stuff as a ball handler. I think his passing is like solid for a wing of like his size and skill. It's nothing crazy or like, I don't think it's a horrible trade or anything. He's all right. I just think there's a lot of, he's a high variance guy to me heading into this year. I think there's a lot of ways that it could go really wrong. And, maybe the Tennessee context isn't just, but however, if there's any program that I want to bet on in terms of short-term strength and conditioning, not many that are higher on my list than the Tennessee Volunteers and what they do with the players that consistently run through. So I think there's also a world where not that he's going to add like 20 pounds of muscle or anything this season, but I think maybe the interior scoring is not as big of an issue as we think. Maybe he's just too tall and too big for even SEC defenders to really contend with when he's running around off of screens. Because like Ament is not just a stationary shooter. But yeah, I think I understand. It's a hot take that I'm disagreeing with and I'm fading with, but I understand it. I think it comes from a reasonable place, and it is just like a weird situation for him. I really wish he went to like Kentucky.
That's where I was hoping he ended up.
Yeah, or even like BYU would have been cool, but that probably wasn't happening once AJ went there. I know they were recruiting him pretty heavily at one point. But yeah, anything else on Ament on Tennessee on what you project from him?
Jacoby Gillespie is going to be a draft pick. That is my Tennessee take.
Yeah, what do you think of Bishop Boswell, Amari Evans? Some guards in this room. They have some random people I've never heard of that aren't real. I it, but it'll be an interesting team. We both like Dwayne Brown a lot, even though I don't know how.
Yeah, I've heard he's done well. I've heard good things from Tennessee on Dwayne Brown, which is very exciting for me.
That's good to hear. He's a good player. He's gonna have a nice time. So let's keep moving on. This is from @Jasper Symbiosis, one that you want to talk about. Jaden Toombs, SMU big, will be a lottery pick. I will give you the floor on this one since this was, this is one that you brought to me is one you wanted to talk about. Assuming you agree with it or at least think it's reasonable.
I don't. I do not. I do not agree with it. I don't think it's particularly reasonable, but I do think Toombs is like fairly interesting player to start. I mean, I'm not speaking out of school here. I feel like it's a well-known thing in niche college basketball circles, but I don't know if he's beating the infield zone. man. Like Andy Enfield, that's just not a context. He's never like curated environments for like prospects to succeed. I think our mutual friend Mike Ribbanoff had noticed that. Like, no, I don't know if it was in reference to Andy Enfield, but I do think the same kind of phenomenon applies where certain environments are like BPM farms, like they're just like tailor-made for guys to accrue or to look good in the eyes of advanced statistics. And I think Enfield's kind of the opposite. And Toombs is, I imagine the designs a lot of people have on Jaden Toombs being a lottery pick is that he's just going to be one of those like model monsters that just racks up blocks and steals and rebounds at a really great clip. And that's how he kind of works his way into draft conversations. I do not think that. I think Toombs has a lot of parallels to a guy like Thomas Sorber, where they're just very cerebral, kind of big. Sorber's taller, but they're like cerebral bigs that maybe. I wish
he had that standing reach.
Yes, but Toombs is, and they're both kind of ground bound, but Toombs is even more ground bound than Sorber and smaller. So I think it's smaller and honestly probably not as far along as a shooter. I would say. I think Sorber had just more projectable like shot mechanics.
They're probably similar.
Similar, yeah. Similar is fair. Similar.
Yeah.
Fair.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say because of all those issues, like things that Sorber was able to transcend because of his defense. I just think Toombs is a notch below Sorber, almost categorically offensively. Like he may have a little more juice as a driver, but.
I think he's probably a better scoring prospect, but that's about it, at least on drives on the interior. I very much agree. I view Toombs as a guy who, like, I'd probably have in, like, a preseason top 60. He's really talented, but I would expect for him to either transfer somewhere, hopefully, or find a different situation and be a guy who breaks out as a sophomore or junior and ends up going
very young for a freshman. I think he's May 07.
He has a lot of really high level traits. He's just another guy. Again, like I think draft Twitter like loves their like really small, like loves their short bigs. And
charged.
I certainly agree with some of these, but I think Toombs is just like a little like, these short bigs, they have to have exceptional length, their leaping ability, or like something to kind of compensate for what the height generally brings. And I don't think Toombs does that. Like he is so good in the post. His footwork is awesome. His touch is fantastic. He's great at like floaters and push shots and hook shots. And I think he's a very smart defender. Like he positions himself really well. He's always early and helping. He's got super quick hands. He can, get steals and swipe balls away. And like you said, just gonna be a stat darling in some ways, I think. And there are games where, he'll play against other equally or highly rated bigs and he just shits all over them all game on both ends because he's perfectly built with this strength and this low center of gravity, and he's a great playmaker. But I'm quite worried about his defense at the college. I mean, NBA level for sure, but I'm worried about his defense at the college level. Like he's gonna have good moments, I think. I'm curious just to see what that SMU team looks like and how they deploy him on defense. Because when you could just like get him to the rim, he's not super tall, but like I think he has great instincts. And he's really smart. But if you want to like put him in space to me and move him around and have him chase guys around the perimeter, it's probably not going to go well. But yeah, he's one I'm in agreement with you. It's just like a very interesting player who is obviously very talented in a lot of ways, but has some real defects. Who wasn't even on that SMU team?
Jermaine O'Neal Jr. comes to mind. The Turkish gentleman, the big, whose name escapes me at the moment, but he is on the team.
They have Sam Walters. He transferred from Michigan. Jaron Pierre transferred from, what was he, Jackson State?
Jacksonville State, yeah. I know a lot of people who are fans of him. I think he's just like a high flyer kind of scoring wing.
Oh, they have Nigel Walls, too. I liked him at JL3, at least somewhat. Who knows how he factors in this year. But, yeah, circling back to the very beginning, I have zero problems with ever fading Andy Enfield players. Like, sometimes you get guys like Evan Mobley who's just he can overcome that kind of crutch, but it takes a special player to overcome a bad situation, especially at this age in college. And while I really like Toombs, I think we both really like Toombs, I don't think it's going to be this year. Yeah. Cool. Let's get into some more random fun questions. At Ben Hilly 94 says, Cooper Flagg will have a better season defensively than at least two guys named on the all-defense second team. So I guess, specifically with the
interesting way to word this one. So is he going to be on the team? Or is it just he's going to be snubbed? We're already projecting snubs in August.
Well, so the way I took it, the way I read this is he's going to be better than at least one of the guys who made it this year. So that would be the all defensive second team this year was Toumani Camara, Rudy Gobert, Jaren Jackson, J-Dub, and Zubats. That's a tough group to crack.
No. I forget they're not doing the positional designations anymore. I think that takes it from a slightly interesting question to zero. There's just no way.
It makes it so tough now. Like, I think Cooper's going to be great on defense as a rookie, and he's going into a great defensive situation where he has so many good rim protectors. Like, that Mavs offense is going to be a nightmare without Kyrie, but their defense, they're going to be able to do some demonic stuff on that end with Gafford and Lively and AD and PJ and Najee's still there. Obviously, I think Cooper is this versatile chess piece. And, like, maybe he just has, like, a shitload of stocks. I wonder how many rookies have made all defensive teams, like, in the last 25 years. I can't imagine it's many, was Wemby all defense as a rookie? He must have been.
I think he was. Yeah. I want to say he was. Outside of that.
Wemby was all defense first team, but Wemby is Wemby.
Yeah. Outside of that, no one's really coming to mind. I mean, I'm assuming Tim Duncan probably was all defense as a rookie.
All right. So, yeah. According to the NBA website, Manute Bol did it, Tim Duncan did it, David Robinson did it, Hakeem Olajuwon did it, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar did it.
Okay. So even making it would put Cooper in the most rarefied air. Yeah, I just can't. I can't see it happening. And of course, he's an all-time defensive prospect and all that. Honestly, what may be the greatest limiting factor is he's probably going to have to create a lot more than you'd expect for a rookie joining a team that was in the playoff contention this past year in the finals 2 years ago.
Sure.
Like, he's probably your third best creator on the team right now, pending Kyrie's return.
Yeah, second right now, I guess. Like, if they had to play today, it's probably second.
It's D'Lo, him, and I feel like there's probably some.
Najee has his moments, but like I'm probably taking Cooper as a rookie over him anyways. I do think it's a great setting because, like, again, Cooper at this point, like, he likes to freelance. He will get back cut sometimes. I think he'll be fine in the long term, but that's just how he plays at the moment. And Dallas is a perfect environment to do that. But like you said, it's really hard to maintain the kind of same defensive intensity. It's like why so many of the best defensive players in the league, at least in terms of metrics, are lower minute players because it's just defense is so much of energy, and it's so much more than energy, right? It's instincts, it's defensive skill, it's positioning, it's awareness. Like, it's harder to do all of that when you're tired as shit because you've been running a bunch of pick and rolls. Yeah. Even with a guy like Stephon Castle we saw last year, who started the year like sizzling hot on defense. He had games where he was like matching up with Steph, I remember, and taking that away. But once Wemby got injured and he was on the ball more late in the season, his defense really slipped. And I don't think that's as much of his fault as like his technique or something getting worse. It's just harder to put in that same kind of defensive attention and focus when you're such a focal point on offense. So it's a fun hot take. I think it was worth a discussion. Just for a bit of the historical.
I'm excited for the Mavs. I am, regardless of the fact that they don't have any like quality creators. Or no, that's too much shade towards D'Lo. But I'm very excited to watch the Mavs.
But yeah, I agree with you, and I'm excited to see Cooper, but I don't think he's going to have a better season defense. I mean, look, maybe like Zubac falls off a cliff or something, or who knows? That would be the only way. But like, he's not going to be better than Gobert or Jaren or J-Dub on defense next year. Probably not even Toumani, who's just so damn good at this point. I think those are all like easily top 25, top 20 defenders in the league. And I think Cooper will get there sooner than later. Probably not going to happen next year, but that's just fine. I don't think that's any reason to worry. So let's get to some questions, a few questions about last year's rookie class. The first one from Anthony GRE 535853 says Nikola Topic will be the best player from the 2024 class. And I wanted to kind of include that with the next one, which is at I love Def TY. I don't know. Sorry about that.
Guys, we got to work on these handles.
I just need your name and like B-ball.
Yeah.
But anyways, they say Jared McCain will be the obvious best player from his draft class in less than a year. Looked the best in the moment and also showed the most potential out of any of them. So what do we think about these two guards, Topic and McCain, as eventually being the best players in a very weird and I think very wide open 2024 rookie class where you could give me 10 names that end up being the most impactful guy in 10 years, and I'd probably not be.
Okay, let's call the group a little bit because I'm interested to see just like let's top five. Who would be in contention right now to end up being at this stage? You think being the best player from 2024? Because I feel like we may have honestly wildly different lists.
We're gonna have different lists for sure, but I think we both have Ron in common.
Yes, yeah,
he's Ron in there. I think he certainly has a strong chance. I mean, I still feel really good. I think Klingon is a guy you were really high on last year, and
love him.
He has his moments. Again, just going to be like with like conditioning and injuries with him. But I think that's something that if that's your biggest issue or one of your main issues, I think that's an issue. I do think Topic and McCain are probably in the group that I would have. I'd probably consider Sarr. I know you wouldn't. I'd probably consider Castle, even though I don't think it I wouldn't project it. I think he did enough as a rookie to where it's worth if he did, he should be in this bucket. I think where if things really keep going right with his slashing development and he can just get a little better as a pull-up shooter. I can imagine it if other guys' development and I guess I kind of think about Reese like Reese Share could, but even I don't know if you're.
I'm the Hawks fan, and I'm gonna say
I was gonna say I don't know if you're Hawks
at all. Someone I thought you would.
I love Reese Share. He just his off-ball movement was so good last year. He did so many good things, but hard for me to see his ceiling with him as the best player in the class. Even I love Collier. The Jazz situation is just so weird, and I feel like I'm kind of fading all of the prospects in that environment just because I don't really like it. But what did you think? Who am I missing?
So off the top, I thought you'd have Matas in there. I thought you were even more.
I do love Matas. I am missing him.
Myself. Yeah. So Matas would probably be in the range. I still believe Reed can work his way into being. It's summer league, and it can't be dismissed the fact that this may be a little bit of a cope for having Reed number one in that class. But I was impressed by how much better he looked just running pick and rolls at summer league.
Fine. I think he's fine.
And man, Ben, you were so gracious to invite me onto your platform. I really hope that I continue to be invited. So I'm mentioning this with those caveats. Edie was good when he played. Edie was really good when he played.
Absolutely. I agree with it. I definitely got higher on what I think he could be in the league. I'm still probably lower on his ultimate ceiling than you, but he was undeniably good last year. And I think there's people who were not trying to downplay what he did as a rookie. And again, I still have my long-term concerns, but he was just so good in what he was asked to do. Did I say Khalil Ware?
You did not.
I think that's a maybe for me. I'd probably lean no just because there's so much to clean up in terms of motor and mentality and physicality and decision. A lot of this stuff
I still think the defense is kind of it's fairly bleak. I think that
it's all right. My most recent rookie recap on the channel was a big deep dive into Ware. So if y'all have not seen that, we definitely recommend checking that out. His defense is, again, I feel like it's kind of like his offense where it's splash plays and just pretty poor gaffes. He is a phenomenal shot blocker, but just has too many plays where he lets the guy run by him and dunk the ball. But anyways, Point being, that's a pretty large list of players that we both mentioned.
Yeah. And I don't really feel comfortable in any direction as far as staking claim to number one.
I think having McCain as that guy is totally reasonable.
Yeah,
I could see myself getting there anyways after I go back and watch him more this summer. Like, I need to go. It's been since December or whatever since I've sat down and really watched Jared McCain, but he was phenomenal this year as a rookie. I think he pressured the rim way more than I expected him to as a rookie. Where his strength and craft translated immediately, even more than I thought it was. I flirted with, but couldn't commit at the time to having McCain over Reed Shepherd. I flirted with it at the time, didn't end up following through on it. Kind of wish I did. I still think Reed's going to be really good, so I don't necessarily regret it. But yeah, McCain is just like, we saw what he could do in such a small sample, scaled up as a primary, and I think we all know what he is as an off-ball player. I think that's pretty safe to bet on. And then Topic is so – I forget where you had Topic or what your thoughts were on Topic before the draft.
I was fairly low on him. I was honestly probably too low on him. I had him in the late teams. I had him myself in the lottery. I think I had him 16th or something like that. I just didn't – there weren't really any intermediate counters, and he was a below the rim driver, like a guy that is dependent on rim attempts and placing pressure on the rim without being, an overly impressive vertical athlete. I was like fairly concerned by, and then obviously, the defense and the shooting concerns. I guess not. I can't say much of that has changed, or his performance in summer league can't have changed my mind much. The handful of minutes he played there.
It's hard to really. I mean, I'm not.
But he did look good, and I did think the fact that he was able to perform at the age he did in the Adriatic League, it was impressive. And I definitely would have him in the lottery if I were to kind of rework my board from that year. But number one, I really think my short list would probably be Kling and Ron, and Edie would probably be my three guys.
I think I definitely have Ron. I definitely have McCain.
Ron looks so good in summer league, man. It was jarring.
I watched him. I got to watch. I don't know if you were at that Pistons Rockets game.
The very last bit. I didn't really consider it.
It was so fun. That wasn't even Ron's best game. I think he was like nuclear against the Knicks either the day before.
The Knicks game I did see, yeah.
I think Ron, McCain, and Modest, honestly, maybe. Like I am so impressed by how he played last year after being high on him. But I really liked Topic. I might have him like outside of this next group. The biggest thing for me in summer league was that he looked fast again, which I kind of figured would happen, but I don't think it's ever a given that guys are going to be the same after they have major injuries. And Topic not only had that major injury in November or December of his season, he re-injured it, when he tried to come back playing in the EuroLeague. And that's always scary. But I think he was getting to the basket. He was making plays. My contention with Topic, I think he's always been a slightly overrated passer where he's a very good passer. I think he's got all of the single layer pick and roll reads. He's a great transition passer. He can make laydowns off of his drives, but I think he's one of these guys where his passing production, at least in the past, has been so fueled by dominant rim pressure, which I think he could possibly replicate. But I do agree with what you said. I think I'm fairly optimistic about his three long term. But the intermediate counters are going to be a big area of improvement for him, since at the moment it's kind of rim or nothing. Which obviously, at the highest level, that's what you want for your majority of your drives to end up in rim attempts, layups, dunks, free throws. But they can't all be that. And of course, you have to have those counters to make defenses honest and actually play them, even if you're not going to go to them often. Adding a quick little step back from 12 feet, or he's getting better, I think, at sneaking the pick and roll. Did it a couple times in summer league, but he usually just snakes all the way to the rim, goes to the other side of a seal, maybe stopping and taking a little 8-foot push shot. There's going to be areas where Topic can improve. Also, I think another kind of point I think you could argue both ways for him being the best guy in the class is where he landed. I think OKC is a great spot for his development as a team player, as a guy who's going to be a contributing piece to winning. But I think he's also a guy who you want to get reps because I think his highest ceiling outcomes are as a downhill creator. And I do think OKC needs his skill set. Like they need another guy who can do what he does, but it's not going to be at the level of like a player on a bad team getting those reps. Like he's going to get some bench. And I think Dagnall is, a lot more willing than a lot of great coaches are to play young players. I think that's part of why he's such a good long-term coach. Is like he's willing to live with the growing pains of playing AJ Mitchell in game 1 of the finals in the second quarter. Like, optimal in the moment, probably not, but long-term, I think it might be. So, but I'm not sure. I think Topic, OKC is an environment where I think he's going to be good, but it's going to be tougher for him to, I think, hit like the best player in the class outcome. So I'd probably have him maybe 4th or 5th if I were ranking it out, but like, the only thing that I feel like pretty good about is having Ron at 1s. Like I still feel confident that I would, in 5 years, I'm predicting Ron to be the best guy. Like he was so good as a rookie, and like he was so much better at like in a lot of ways than I expected him to be out of the gate. Which is really
cool. Definitely. Yeah, it was just such a weird environment in the G League. As it tended to be with the Ignite. And yeah, it was awesome to see him rise to the occasion. I think if I were to put a final answer in, Klingon. I'm going to roll with Donovan Klingon.
Let's go. G League Ignite, low-key getting kind of vindicated lately with Dyson breaking out. And with Ron and Modest had good rookie seasons.
Who would have thought if your entire rotation consists of 18-year-olds, it's going to be hard to win games?
Yeah. I feel like I think the Ignite program rightfully got, the whole setup rightfully got criticism, but I think the players themselves probably individually get a little underrated and under-discussed about, because everyone was kind of talking about how much of a shit show it was. That it's like, hey, there's real guys here. And like, they generally picked young and developmental prospects. Like that's what they generally went for at Ignite. And those guys are obviously going to take time. Like, there's your Marjon Beauchamp, but like not so many of those guys. But anyways, ready to move on to our next questions.
Yeah.
So we have a set of questions about some returning players, and I thought I'd just kind of group them all together and then let us talk about the guys we want to talk about. So at Pakhatak 94, Pakhattak 94. Sorry, again, I'm just going to keep apologizing every time. Says Rob Wright / Josh Jefferson / Dalen Swain as top 20 guys. At Shrell Interlude says, is it Hans Steinbach? Hannon?
I think so, yeah.
Hans Steinbach and Patrick Ngongba at Duke, greater than Nate Ament, we talked about, in Jaden Quaintance. They say Darion Williams, Dalen Swain, Carter Knox, top 25, and Robert Wright over Darius Acuff. So a couple common threads there. High on Rob Wright, high on Dalen Swain. Some other highs and lows in there. I'm not sure what catches your eyes immediately in this kind of set of thoughts on returners.
Anyone
I guess not all returners, but
anyone that talks hoops with me or talks draft with me knows that coming into last year, not many people were higher on Rob Wright's ability to contribute right away than I was. I do not consider Rob an NBA prospect in the immediate future. Not to say, just all the small guard, concerns, all the small guard red flags, and Rob just doesn't have, he's not an exceptional enough shooter or athlete, I think, to make up for any of those deficiencies. I think he's gonna be awesome, and shout out to him I'm literally saluting him for getting the bag at BYU. What a payday! He's getting first round money, so I guess what does it matter? But I kind of don't see Rob Wright working his way into the draft conversations. So do you have anything you wanted to add on Rob?
I agree with you. I've seen him as a pretty popular sleeper, and I understand it. I get
he's
why.
Awesome. He's fun.
He's so good, and he's fun to watch. So, like he's always making. I think he has a great balance, as all a lot of these high-level point guards do, of like being really surgical and not making a lot of mistakes, but also having the kind of cojones and the skill and the vision to hit some of these high-level passes. And I think Wright's passing is really awesome, but it's hard to be a 6-foot point guard who took 5 threes per 100 and can't really score at the rim. Free throw rate sub 30, shot sub 55% on close twos. Not like I think he could be a solid shooter. Like he shot
I think
35% on reasonable volume, but if we're talking about not only the NBA, but being a first round or a top 20 pick, as a really shorter guard. Like he is 6 feet tall. He is not a tall person. Is he listed I think he's listed at 6'1" maybe, but you watch him play and it's clear that size is an issue. But I agree with you pretty much fully. BYU perfect spot. If there is a spot where he's going to get NBA buzz, like playing next to Dybantsa in that offense, like is a good spot to be in. So just from the perspective of like he's in an awesome situation for his own good, pretty much like that I get. But of all of the guys mentioned, would you have him over Acuff? Since I guess was one of the
no chance. No chance.
I probably wouldn't either. As much as I'm not crazy high on Acuff. Well, like I'm not crazy about Acuff, but even him I think has significantly more scoring and off-dribble creation juice than Wright, and similar limitations regarding the size. Like I don't think he's as good of a defender, but I think Wright's going to have a tough time with that at the NBA level anyways, even though I do like a lot of what he does in that end, especially off the ball. But yeah, anyways, I am definitely curious to talk about Dalen Swain with you. He's someone who I know has a lot of buzz in draft Twitter, and I'm not exactly sure where you lie on the Swain coin, but
I'm probably not as high on draft Twitter, but higher than consensus. I think he's definitely like in the NBA ether, like as far as he's in the orbit of NBA draft prospect. I just think again comes down to the shooting. I was really surprised with how like confident, capable, and effective a driver he was while being thoroughly disrespected as a shooter. Like I watched a couple of his pick and roll possessions the other day, and defenders were going to the baseline. They were sagging way off of Dalen Swain, going well under these ball screens, and he was still getting to the cup and finished really well, even on a heavily assisted shot diet at the rim. But I think I'm curious to see what this Texas team looks like. That's another team that kind of
forgot he transferred to Texas. That's gonna be weird. Yeah. I don't know.
That's another. It's gonna be weird. I don't know. I'm actually looking up their roster right now because I want to see how that touch gesture. Oh. Yeah, I don't think Dalen Swain's going to be making his way into draft conversations. Like, this is fairly brutal.
It's not a good roster. It's going to be a tough one. Like I really do like Swain. I think Swain is a good prospect. I think I agree with you generally. I feel like that's pretty close to how I describe my perception of Swain. Is definitely not as high as some of the draft Twitter buzz I've seen, but like higher than like again, just like a lot of the players they have, even like the good ones, like the guards, like Jordan Pope, Tremont Mark are solid college players. I don't think are super conducive to like setting up Swain in the spots he likes to play. There's two things I really love about Swain. One big thing, and I guess one like I guess the big thing is just his dribbling. Like he is an unbelievable ball handler for
a legitimate 6'8". Like he is a wing.
Tall, long, has crazy ball control. Like these long wingspan guys are often bad dribblers, just kind of biomechanically because it's harder to keep the ball close to their body. Like, and the ones who are good dribblers, and despite of it, I think that's worth something. Like I was talking about this with you offline earlier about Taylon Kinney, who's a prospect in the 2026 class. But I think it applies to Swain too. Like the way that he can get in and out of moves, and I think he's decisive. Like he doesn't have a lot of wasted motion when he dribbles either. I think he's pretty good about just getting the ball on the floor, getting into his move. And then he's also like one of these like premier little thing kings that draft Twitter falls in love with. Like he just is a positive play machine. Mm-hmm. He's always doing something where like, oh, nice. Like he's sealing someone off in transition and scoring. He's getting his hand on a ball and forcing a reset. He's finding a window to leak in transition. He's just constantly making these positive plays. I do think that's a really valuable signal and something that I do value projecting forward. But I'd also like my wings who are definitely not bigs to shoot more than 1.7 threes per 100 possessions.
He's such an interesting case, man, because I feel like his career is so instructive in how unclear shooting projection can be. Like, how many guys do you see that are above 80% from the line on their career?
So weird.
And like you said, and shoots no threes and shoots them poorly when he does. He has 11 made threes over 2 years. He's shooting 20%.
11 of 54, 81.6% at the line, only 74 attempted non-rim twos, shooting 36.5%. So like most signals are like, yeah, this guy's not a shooter, but then I think for me, it's like the free throw stuff can be so fickle, but like usually the guys who are
back in
high
high
volume,
school, yeah.
Usually the guys who are high volume 85 plus, like it's pretty solid. Like in the middle, anywhere with like 70, 82, 83, like there's so much variance. Guys end up being great free throw. Like I think of like Joe Harris, KCP, Anthony Edwards, a bunch of guys who didn't shoot free throws well pre-NBA and ended up being fine shooters. But like Swain is such a weird one where I, like you said, I think ultimately I lean like probably won't have him as a first rounder, or if I do, it'll be fringy because I think the situation is not conducive to his offensive success. And I don't think I have a ton of reason to really believe in this shot improving. But if it does improve, where I think a lot of players are much more complex and like I just need to see him shoot the ball, but Swain is just so good in so many other ways, but this thing is such a limiting factor that I would love to see it improve.
Yeah.
But he's fascinating. I totally agree with that. I really like, I personally have, I think I'm higher on Jaden Quaintance and Nate Ament than this commenter, but I did want to talk about Steinbach and Ngongba, since it's kind of a weird big class where a lot of the good bigs in this class, I guess like kind of like last year, but not as.
That's charitable, man. That was a really nice spin. You really do this for a living.
It's an interesting look. I mean, if you're looking for a real center to anchor your team's defense, I would look elsewhere. But I think there's some interesting players. I think Ngongba and Steinbach are two of the more interesting ones. I really like Ngongba. I think I probably have them in similar ranges, but I've seen Steinbach. People have having him like top 5. I'm curious what your thoughts on that are. So I don't know where this specific person has him or thinks of him, but if it's over Ament and Quaintance, I think it's fair to assume that it's reasonably high.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had more developed. This is a full transparency. I've been full immersing myself in, Ben knows this, like high school basketball stuff. I've been doing a lot of that lately, so I'm a little behind on some of the draft stuff. And Hans Steinbach's one of those guys that somewhat fell through the cracks. I mean, I've seen him and I have some thoughts, but not nearly as in depth as some. Maybe I will come away with thinking, he's a top 5 or 6. Actually, I probably won't, but maybe I will come out of watching him and grinding some of the numbers, thinking he's like well worth the top 10 pick. But I think with him, it's like kind of firmly in that tweener category. He's a smart player. He seems really good, but he's like light. I saw a 9-1 standing reach, which is fairly undersized for a true 5, and he hasn't shot to the point where
he's certainly not a 5 in my opinion.
Yeah, which when we were placing him in that different, like a separate category as a 4, I don't know if he necessarily is. He hasn't proven to clear that skill threshold yet as a 4. And I mean, I'm just excited to watch Washington. So Same. I will be tuning
really
in.
Excited to watch Yates.
Yeah.
So Steinbach, Hans is like, we talked about Toombs this earlier, but he is the real like smaller big draft Twitter model killer. Like he was dominant against his age group, dominant in the German Pro B last year in 12 games there before going to the big club. He averaged 25 points on an absolutely ridiculous 64 true shooting. Like it's crazy.
His rebounding numbers were ridiculous.
His hands are some of the strongest I've ever seen at this level. His touch is unbelievably good. So from the perspective of just like looking for young players with really unique qualities, I think Steinbach definitely passes that test. I need to watch more of his like big league German games and focus more on his defense, because in the couple that I have noted, I wasn't crazy impressed. Like he's just not that twitchy of a mover. He's not that long. He's not that explosive. And like he's like again, it's tough. Another one of these guys that's like he's smart, he's well positioned, but to be an elite small, like non-center sized biggish defender, like you have to be an elite disadvantage defender. You have to be able to play in those 2v1 situations. You have to be able to play make. And I don't know if I think he's that, but his offense is ridiculous. Like his scoring is awesome. He's a great ball handler for a guy of his size, even though like we're kind of getting to, don't know if he's a great ball handler for like a perimeter player. I think against other bigs, he's going to smoke them. with his ball handling and with his coordination and his explosion off of like 1 feet in traffic. But I don't necessarily know if I think that's going to translate to like the college or NBA level, but he's also another one who I'm like TBD on. Just since the FIBA sample is just so weird, and I don't super heavily value that. Even though he was undeniably incredibly impressive in that sample, he was dominant, and that's what you want to see. So like, not crazy about him, but I do think I'd probably take I'd take Pat Ngongba over him at this point.
Same.
And feel pretty solid about it. I don't know what your general thoughts were on Ngongba after last season. How high you could get him, because he was pretty impressive towards the end of the season. Obviously, he was injured for a lot of the start of the season, had to work his way back into the rotation.
Which is a concern. Like, Pat has an injury history already in his young career.
That's never good, for sure. I really like that Ngongba is clearly like a heel.
Yeah.
He's
a psycho.
He'll like piss people off. He's so good at like getting his opponents in positions like, yeah, he's probably committing fouls, but they're not getting called, and the opponent like gets pissed and does a more obvious foul in retaliation. Mm-hmm. That's my favorite, just like random little thing about Ngongba. But he's like, he's just a really good player. Like, a lot of what he was, his production last year, his best stuff like came in garbage time and blowouts. Duke destroyed a lot of the opponents they played, and Maluoff was one of the best college bigs in the country. So of course, on-off numbers and stuff like that might not paint him as fair, but I don't think that's super relevant when kind of projecting for this season. He is one of the strongest freshman bigs I can remember watching. Like the way that he carves space, whether it's like boxing out for rebounds or sealing off a defender to create space for a layup. Like it's crazy. He is so hard to move. I think that's a good like foundation. He's strong. He's a sicko, like we talked about. I think his passing is excellent. He's a great ball handler. So there are like similarities to Steinbach, but I think he's just more of an actual center than him.
Yeah. I remember I'd seen, and this wasn't confirmed, I'd seen Pat's wingspan listed as 7'5", which kind of matches the tape. I mean, he looks really long, and he just has more true center size. And I don't really think he's that much worse of a driver or ball handler than Steinbach, to be honest. Like,
I think
Pat's fairly comfortable.
I think he's pretty exceptional there for guys his size. Like
another guy.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, if Pat had, like, being candid, if Pat had come into the season healthy, I was gonna have him as a one and done last year. I thought he was spectacular in AAU in high school, and just had bad injury luck. I think the injury he had that took him out at the beginning of his freshman season and the end of his senior season was a similar injury to one he'd had as like a sophomore or something. He just has like a laundry list of injuries. But I think Pat's awesome. Just by merit of having Cam Boozer, was going to be one of the best front courts in the country, but him, along with Dybantsa, who I've enjoyed the little bits of pieces I've gotten to watch, it's going to be a stellar front court.
Yeah. I meant to add a question. There were a couple questions about Sarr. I meant to add one, but then what are your thoughts on him briefly? Just because I've watched like 2 games of his. I feel like there's
I haven't watched
very little like
I haven't watched
against good opponents. Is kind of my issue with him. Like he played one high minute game in the ACB against a bad team, and he destroyed them. And he like played like 1 or 2 high minute EuroLeague games and was pretty solid. It's like I like what I've seen. My confidence meter on him is still pretty low.
I think he's good. I think he's a really quality defender. I think he's a legitimate wing. I think he's around 6'7", seems to be really long on tape. Yeah, and smart player. Just I'm concerned about the shooting, obviously. So we had such a small sample to operate off last year, and he was kind of the reverse Dalen Swain, where he shot really well from 3, and I think he was at 40% from the line or something. So I'm not – the mechanics look good. I didn't – there wasn't anything like visibly wrong with his shot from what I was able to see, but I'm not as confident in him being as a one and done. There are 3 guys on Duke that I'm like very confident should be our firm prospects to me, in Pat and the Boozer twins.
Yeah.
And anyone else is kind of TBD. I'm just going to have to wait for opening day, see how the rotation shakes out. I think Sarr's probably my 4th. Like, he would be my 4th prospect, on that team, but still, it'll be difficult to see how they or interesting to see how they mesh early on.
I think I'd take Kamania slightly over Sarr, but same tier to me. Like I need to watch, and also just like Kamania is a guy who I've watched a ton of, and Sarr is not a guy I've watched a lot of, so I need to continue to kind of just round out my samples there. But I think Gongba wouldn't shock me if he stays really healthy and ends up as a lottery pick. I think it's totally possible. So I think the Steinbosch over an Ament or acquaintance, I don't think I'm there yet, but Gongba, I can totally see the vision. It's tough with these small sample guys. He was so dominant in the little minutes he played. But I still do think there's a lot to clean up, especially in terms of his awareness and technique on defense. He was involved in so many miscommunications that he didn't get punished for basically ever because Duke was ridiculous on defense last year. And they'll probably be good again this year, but not as good on defense as they were last year. But they'll be good on that end. They won't be Cooper and Malawash good. That's an unfair expectation. Curious where your head's at on Darion Williams. One of our Charlie Leonard said Darion Williams in his top 25. I had Darion Williams ranked there last year, but I've kind of lowered on him sadly as I watched throughout the summer.
I think a lot of his deficiencies were kind of masked by Texas Tech, and they're on both ends, what they did schematically. And I just don't know. He's just undersized. I think he measured in shoes with 6'6".
6'4". It was without shoes, it was brutal.
So he might have even been under 6'6" in shoes, which is brutal for someone with Darion's kind of build and athletic.
He measured 6'4" and a half barefoot, 8'5" standing reach, 6'6" wingspan. Simply not good enough to play the way he does.
I mean, those are shooting guard measurements, or those are someone with more of a perimeter profile measurements. And I want to say, for example, Casey Wallace had an 8'4.5" standing reach for a frame of reference. That's Darion's kind of believable. Yeah. But Darion has a phenomenal mid-range game, phenomenal kind of in between the 3-point line and the restricted area, and which is fine. I mean, he was effective there, and he's a great post-up player, makes really good decisions out of the mid-post area, but you just need – now, if he comes out guns a-blazing as far as he's putting up double-digit threes per 100, something like that, he's always had phenomenal touch, but defensively, watching Darion make longer rotations is just it's brutal. It's brutal watching him attempt to make long closeouts and just how quickly he gives up middle or how quickly he'll get just blown off the ball versus not even necessarily quicker perimeter players, but just true perimeter players. So I think, that NC State, Darion's going to be the future guy because he's proven. He's a proven commodity. He's a proven great player. But I'm just fascinated to see how I'm
taking Paul McNeil and running with.
I like Paul more as a prospect for sure.
I know we do. Yeah.
Yeah, and even Terrence Arsenault, I'm just interested to see from a coaching perspective with Will Wade who he's going to decide to rely on. And those weren't slouches he brought over from McNeese. But I think those guys are going to demand their share of touches. And
for sure, we saw that in the tournament last year against Clemson. He's real guys. Yeah, I agree with you generally. I wish I was higher on Darion. I was high on him during last season, but just really going back more the size and the athleticism really does show up on tape. And I think Williams is really good at masking that at the college level. So it's easy for me to kind of look more broadly and be he's not getting kind of derailed by this as much as you think. But when you look closer, it's he's really often rotating the contest to the rim, but so many times he just gets shot and scored over. Or I think he's a really smart on-ball defender. He's good at cutting off angles, and I think he generally picks his spots while guarding screens. It's his feet are just slow and his hips don't turn that quick. That's just he's unfortunately small and slow.
Another thing with Darion,
to him, but I love Darion.
Love him.
Like you kind of alluded to, I think the way with him is just getting the 3-point volume up. And to be fair, last year at Texas Tech, his highest 3-point volume season, 8.3 per 100, definitely lower efficiency. But when you account for the volume, definitely easily the pull-up mid-range volume was also encouraging. So I think if Darion takes another volume shooting leap, I could get it because he is such a phenomenal wing passer. He is such a phenomenal wing passer from all over the floor. But I would much prefer another guy who was mentioned in the set, which is Josh Jefferson.
Yes.
So Jefferson, I think both of us agree. Why do you like Jefferson more than Swain? And the specific hot take from
more than Swain. That's interesting.
More than Darion Williams.
Okay.
Sorry.
No,
we can talk Swain, but that hot take had both Swain and Jefferson as top 20 guys.
Yeah, so I hadn't really considered comparing those two, even though they kind of vaguely play the same role, same position.
Forwards who have shaky jumpers,
yeah. I think Josh is one of the better defenders in the country, just like on the short list, maybe one of the 10 best defenders in the country. And I feel like it's tied together as far as like how he processes the game offensively and defensively. A guy with that, he's legitimate. Like he has forward size, like power forward. Like he can play.
He has a lot of the same issues that Darion has, but he's big.
Yeah, just has positional size. I also think his issues are more easily addressed considering that he's shown capabilities to play downhill and be effective going downhill as like an interior. He doesn't rely nearly as much on the kind of mid-range area as Darion does to stay efficient, or just like that. That's not like a avenue of offense that he depends on nearly as heavily as as Darion.
He was over double the free throw rate, over like significantly more rim volume last year. Like easy to see this either on the stat sheet or just kind of watch it and play. Like he has the physical tools, I think, to kind of be the player that he can be. And I'm definitely less worried about his jumper being a limiting factor, even than Swain, I think.
Yes,
because I think Jefferson leans more towards moonlighting as an interior player. Whereas like Swain's a great athlete, he gets stocked. He's firmly a perimeter guy though. Like he's not someone who I want playing the 4 super often, even though I think maybe at some points he could do it. But Jefferson is someone who definitely not a hopeless shooter. Certainly not as promising as Darion's already a good shooter. It's just levels with him. With Jefferson, it's getting to the point where like, can you force defenses to give a shit about you in important moments? And like 4.5 threes per 100 at 30%. 40% on 181 long non-rim twos, 74% at the line. It's like, to me, that shooting profile is like could improve, could not improve.
It's enough for me. He's solid enough in enough areas to where I'm comfortable making the bet. I don't know if that bet will be in the top 20 or in the first round or somewhere in the mid 30s, but I think of Josh as like a firm draft prospect. I've placed him in that bucket.
I 100% agree. I think he is. I'd have to think about it on the short list. Certainly has to be on the short list of best defenders in the class. Peterson, Quaintance, Caleb Wilson up there, Yesufu, probably other guys I'm forgetting, like Miles Bird, maybe you can even throw in. But I think Jefferson is really like that as a team defender, as an on-ball defender. He can switch. I've even seen him play as a drop coverage big for Iowa State when they needed to. He can just do so many things at a high level on that end, and while also being a good passer. And while I don't think Jefferson's like a projectable NBA scorer, he had big scoring games this year. Mm-hmm. He was able to put up points just being smart and using his size. And he's a guy who I was actually writing about this with a high school guy. I was writing about Anthony Thompson, 2026 high school guy this morning, and there's kind of similarity. In how they score is it's a lot of organic, low maintenance offense. It's not necessarily they're demanding the ball as much as getting opportunistic situations for post ups or seals or cuts or second side drives. And I value that for projecting these guys who are probably going to be late first, second round role players at the next level. And I think Jefferson has a good chance to be that. Was curious to hear if you had a strong take on Carter Knox, someone who I very much don't have a strong opinion on for next year at this point.
I can't say I do. I obviously came on really strong towards the end of the year with someone I was not particularly high or a fan of coming into the season. And I don't know. I think him and Billy Richmond showed flashes. I thought they were interesting. Knox more so than Richmond, but Richmond a little bit younger than Knox. I firmly TBD. That entire Arkansas team, I feel fairly comfortable Acuff will perform and produce. How efficient, we'll see. But the remainder of that Arkansas roster, I'm just big question marks all around.
Yeah, Knox is again, he has exceptional interior scoring touch, and he was able to create events on defense at times. That's a good sample. He was good at the end of the year, but I don't have a strong enough take on him yet to to make a definitive statement. We've got one more returning prospect question from our buddy Tyler at Prospecting NBA. This is a good one. Cam Carr will finally take his rightful place as the best prospect from that Link team. And those who remember, was that a team with Jacoby?
It was Jacoby, Elliot Cadeau, Corey Chest. I don't know if we have any Corey Chest fans in the chat.
He had some moments LSU. I liked Tyler McKinley some, but just from the perspective that the competition is low, I'm not so crazy about Jacoby Walter, even though I do think he had some flashes last year. He's not someone I'm so interested in long term. But yeah, Carr transferred to Baylor this offseason. I think that's an interesting spot for him, probably better than Tennessee, even though he would have been really useful for Ament to have alongside him, I think. But just not a guy who's played that much, really. Mm-hmm. He's played 18 games. For a guy who's, one of his main things was that he was an exceptional movement shooter. He's taken 23 threes in his college career. He's made 7 of them. Crazy good small sample, stock numbers and ATO and free throw rate. But just this to me is one where you're probably still just leaning on the high school sample, which is fine, I think.
Yeah. It was, but also still fairly incomplete. I think he was injured going into his last year of AAU, didn't really play that much on what was a pretty stacked team that year. I think he was on Mocan. I think,
Sounds right.
Mocan. I think it was Mocan, yeah. But it was a stacked team, and then really just went off that high school season, which I enjoyed. I was really high on Cam Carr going into his freshman year with how much clarity that class lacked. I thought he was a sneaky one-and-done guy, but with Cam, I don't know if it's going to be a great situation. I'm kind of skeptical about Baylor. I really didn't like the portal haul they got. Tunde's a guy who I like enough, but I don't know if he's necessarily the kind of player that's going to tie all of these pieces together. In fact, I think it may be the opposite. He's kind
offensively, I don't think so.
Yeah, he's definitely not offensive.
Defensively, it'll be great, but
he's limited field-wise. Cam is I just want to see the activity from Cam. I just want to see if he's able to, obviously he's not going to maintain these kind of stock numbers, but I want to see, is he able to produce defensively consistently? Because the shot will be fine. The shot will be there. It'll work. And there's obviously not going to be there's not really, I don't see there being creation equity in Cam's game. So he really has to guard. And he really, for a guy with such ridiculous athletic tools and measurements and just a general profile, I wish he just applied that physicality, those tools on a more consistent basis.
And Carr played 4 games last year. He got hurt early in the year.
Yeah, he broke his wrist and then transferred mid-season.
And just didn't have any shake. And then his freshman year, he played in 14 games. He played 10 minutes or more once in that 14. So it's just maybe if you were really high on him in high school, I think it's reasonable to say finally he's going to get his chance. But injuries, of course, no fun, and I probably wouldn't bet on it, but I don't think it's impossible. But it's fun to think about.
Yeah.
Cool. A couple more questions. I think we might actually have time to get through all of these, unless you're in a rush to get out of here.
No, I'm good, man.
We got 3 more. I think we're actually going to get through all of these. This might be a first on one of these. That's crazy. Our friend Mike Gribinov says at MikeGrib8, Braden Burries is going to get lottery pick hype next year, and deservedly so. So I'm curious to hear what you think about Burries generally. My read on Burries was always he struck me as a guy who I thought would be a really great college guard, but I was unsure about for the NBA for one reason or another, whether or not it was his ability to easily create downhill and gain separation. But he is a very good player. Arizona should be awesome next year. So what are your thoughts on a potential one and done lottery type season from Braden Burries?
I'm not mad at the idea of him being one and done at all. I mean, he annihilated the competition his last year of UIBL. I mean, was probably one of the 3 or 4 most effective players in the entire event. But with him, Arizona's in dire need of spacing. They're honestly in dire need of downhill creation. I'm a massive fan of Koa P. Yeah.
In
and I'm a pretty big fan of Dwayne Aristotle. I think he can contribute more than a lot of people are anticipating early on. But from the perimeter, as far as their backcourt goes, Jaden Bradley, wonderful college player, not necessarily his bread and butter as far as like creating at a high clip or just like being a high volume decision maker and creator. Braden needs to do that, and he just has never been the most consistent decision maker. He's just never been the most consistent playmaker on that. He's driving, and he's driving to score. So I kind of need to see him balance those drives, or just kind of like there to be a little bit more nuance to those drives than just, him halfback dive. Not there's more nuance than that, but I mean more than him just penetrating with the intent of getting fouled and scoring. And then I want to see the 3-point shooting elevate. And it honestly needs to make a sizable leap. Braden's old, man.
That was
he's
that was
really
my other
old.
thing that I wanted to. That was my other thing that I wanted to bring up is one of these guys who really physically dominate AAU and EYBL but are older, especially guards. I think there's some red flagginess there. And Burry's I think is a guy who relies on that certainly relies on the strength and the physicality to get downhill. And at every level so far, it's been wicked. I do think there were games this past high school season where obviously his Roosevelt team was not, compared to what he's gonna have in college, right? But games against Dynamic Prep, games against Montverde, teams that have real NBA quality athletes. Burry's struggled more than he did in EYBL to gain separation. And he has had some, I don't know if maybe this is my own bias that I'm just anchoring to. He had a game against, I think it was Strive for Greatness last summer where he was just inexplainably horrible.
He played for Strive for SFG, so maybe he was playing.
Maybe it was who was it? Yeah, no, he played against SF. Maybe it was against Knight Riders. I'm looking at my notes from this are not organized, but he was just. I'll look for the game later, but he was just. I literally wrote in my notes something must be wrong here. He was so painfully bad in that game, but it happens. And I think Burry's these really athletic downhill scoring guards. Definitely, there's potential with them, and I think I value the paint pressure. I'm just not fully sold on that being something that translates at the high college and NBA level. I think he's going to be a solid pull-up shooter from the mid-range. He can stop on a dime and get into his jumpers. I think he has a good amount of defensive potential with his size and his strength too. But yeah, I guess it wouldn't totally shock me, but I'm currently not projecting Burry's that level. And like you said, he's going to be 20 years old on draft night, right?
Yes. Yeah. He's basically, wait.
I'm looking.
He's basically he's going to turn 21 before the season starts.
Tankathon has him at 20.75 on draft night, which is
I think
sophomore, average to old sophomore age, basically.
Yeah.
Which is a real thing.
Yeah. Definitely. And like you said, for a guy that relies on kind of imposing his physicality on opponents, that's going to be a little concerning.
Right. And what do you think of his first step? Because I feel like he's quick, but not so overwhelming that it's something I think he can rely on as his primary gear or tool.
I tend to agree. And now Arizona's play style, they play up and down. They will lean into pace, so that may kind of mask a little bit of the half court, limitations. But I agree. I don't think he's some lightning quick guard prospect.
All right, 2 more quick questions. We got at Maxi Monster 111. I love the energy of this one. Adu Thera will be in the Lakers playoff rotation this year. What do we think?
Sure. I mean, I'm trying to think of the Lakers front court options. So they signed Jake LaRavia.
Yeah,
obviously.
So right now, their depth chart in terms of 4s and 5s right now is Rui, LaRavia, Vanderbilt, Maxi Kleba, DeAndre Ayton, Jackson Hayes, and Christian Coloco. And then LeBron, obviously, who plays a lot of the 4 these days. But I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah. I mean,
do you think he's going to be a better rookie than Jared Vanderbilt is this
currently? I'm the wrong person to ask, and this might shock you considering, my other leanings player-wise. I'm not the biggest Jared Vanderbilt guy, so I really wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. And Vanderbilt's also had just so many issues with injuries in the past. Not that Thoreau hasn't, but
I mean, at this point, it's just like he's played.
Coaches probably trust him more.
He's played fewer than 60 games across the past 2 seasons.
Yeah,
like he played 39 games. Played 36 games this year in 29 games. So like maybe I think JJ could do something with him, but especially considering how in his short time as a coach, JJ has approached playoff rotations. Hard for me to imagine, just this is a guy who played 40-year-old LeBron, 40-year-old LeBron and Luka 24 minutes at the end of the second half of that Wolves game. Like maybe for other teams, not sure if I can maybe he totally breaks out in the regular season, establishes a role, and then is a factor in the playoff rotation. Would be awesome. We both love Thiero. I think that's in the cards in the future for sure. But next year, I mean, I like the energy, but I probably wouldn't. I respect it. And then our final take of the video from @DiceGotHacked says Beringer will have a better career than Malawash. That's interesting. Just, similar archetypally, giant, athletic, shot blocking, paint finishing centers. That's definitely a hot take, I think, though. Beringer having a better career over Malawash, even though Beringer did look stupidly good.
He looked spectacular. He was absolutely spectacular. And the Minnesota coaching staff treated me with a handful of Beringer Zakarsky minutes. So, that was just a wonderful experience all around. I'm going to say no. I'm going to stand my ground. I was a massive Malawash guy during that cycle. So yeah, I'm gonna say probably not. Both good players though.
I'm gonna stick with you. I got higher on Beringer as the cycle kind of wound down. Just really evaluating like his timeline. He really has gotten a lot better over the last year or so. Like just watching the games early, his last international season versus the ones towards the end, it was night and day. But I think the same kind of applies for Malawash as someone who's consistently improved over the last year or two and is on a positive development track. Like I get where the take comes from, but I just again think of kind of Malawash as a superior version of this type of player. I think he has much more offensive pathways to being more than just like a traditional low usage rim runner than Beringer. And defensively, like maybe you could argue that Beringer is just totally unbelievable vertical athleticism and like hip movements and stuff can give him a higher ceiling. But I mean, Malawash I think is so far ahead of him at the same age pretty much as a defensive player in most ways. So I would take Malawash, but I understand the take. I included it because I think it's interesting and I think it's reasonable, especially coming off the heels of just I think it was like was it literally the first Vegas Summer League game? Like it was the Wolves Pelicans, or I'm trying to think of who it was, where Beringer had like
7 blocks or
seven,
something. Yeah, maybe more.
It was like 15 plus impact contests at the rim, and he was just like, "Holy shit, this is Summer League again! This is awesome." That was the last question on the sheet. I don't think I've ever gotten through a full sheet. It's an hour and a half. That's probably why. Before we head out, I am going to, if you watched you to Ahmed, if you watched the last one with Chuck, you know this is coming. But now it's time for your hot take. I need a prospect hot take from you. Ideally, something that we didn't touch on super intently, but if it has to be, then it can be. And I'll give you one as well of course.
All right. I want it to be good. And considering how many we got off the board, let me think. I think Caden Boozer's going to be the first guard off the board.
Assuming we're non-Darren tier, to be clear.
Yes, yeah. I really need to stop that. I really need to get you the first.
No,
point
I do
guard.
the same thing. Like he's so upper echelon. I'm like I don't even think about it with him. I'm like, okay, he was a guard, but Caden. Yeah, I mean, I love this. I have Caden. I think it's like the third or fourth guard on my board, but it could easily, as we talked about earlier at the very beginning, like after Darren, I think there's a big drop off in the guard pool. And there's a lot of guys that I can be. But what's your quick pitch for Caden as the first guard off the board eventually? Because I agree with you. You're not going to get any descending from me. But
yeah, I just love guard. Well, first of all, he's big. Caden's legitimately like probably in the realm of 6'5".
I was going to say, you think he's 6'5" and shoes?
I was someone sent me measurements the other day where he was basically that. I think he was like
he's grown a good bit over the last like 2-3 years.
Yes.
Like he was small.
And obviously, because he's Cam Boozer's twin brother, very young for the class. I think he's like July 07, so one of the younger players in the entire class.
18.9 on draft night. I think it's pretty much like the youngest or second youngest player in the class for next year, which not crazy surprising or anything, but
yeah. So what I love about Caden, I love guards that kind of impose pace on the game. Like whether or not like guys that excel in the half court, maybe some guys that can kind of inject pace like Caden does. I think one of the more interesting kind of subplots of this Duke season is they typically play John Shire. Obviously, like by the way they've played, he likes control over the offense. He likes to play a more deliberate style. And I mean, that worked wonders last year with like Concanipple and even Cooper. I think made like serious leaps as a half-court creator and then having like the vertical pressure of Malawak and all that. But I think because they don't really have any traditional half-court creation on this roster that'll be able to, and I think the ACC is going to be much more staunch competition this year. I think he's going to lean into what the Twins have done best at lower levels, and I think they're just going to run a lot. I think they're going to get out in the open court. They have guys that can run, like are athletic enough to get out and finish in transition, but can make good decisions in like that same setting. Like Cam, go ahead.
The Kamania fit is going to be so natural with those two. Like the way that those three could operate in like horn sets or a lot of the backdoor stuff they'll have to do or in transition, like you were saying, like that's going to be. Whew.
Yeah, and I hope that's what they do. I hope they're one of the quicker teams in the country by pace. And we'll see. We will see on the play style. But regardless, I think Caden's just performed at every level. And because of the size, I think if you have more of like a more talented half-court creator, he can slide next to him. He's a much better spot-up shooter than he'd been in the past. Like he's made serious funky shot. It's a funky-looking shot, but he's made significant strides in that department. So, yeah, I just don't really see any glaring – now, maybe if you think – you're comparing him to, say, Mikquel Brown, who can be more of that traditional 30 usage guard, probably would lean Mikquel in that situation, but who can contribute to, a variety of lineup configurations and rosters, I would probably lean Caden.
Yeah, Caden is not a lead guard in the NBA level by any means to me. But that's okay. Like even in a complementary role, I'm going to be watching very closely, like the scoring specifically off the catch and out of pick and rolls. I want to see how we can kind of because I do think even though he's improved as a shooter, he still struggles at times when good hard closeouts from athletic players where he can't just easily blow by him or make a decision. And then when defenses just kind of play under his pick and rolls, he can get in modes where he's like not wanting to shoot the shots or he's just trying to play conservative. And I do think if there's a world where Caden doesn't end up getting drafted this year, he ends up going back to school, which I project him as a lottery pick, but that's kind of would be the limiting factor. But I do agree with you that I think Caden is phenomenal, underrated, deserves more buzz. For my hot take, I'm just gonna go with one that I thought about picking one that I know you disagree with, but I think I just the first one that came to my mind is going to be an Ahmed supported one, and it's Shelton Henderson of Miami.
Dude,
first round pick. He is absent from any mainstream draft boards. ESPN didn't have him in their initial top 60. I haven't seen him listed anywhere. And maybe that would have been the case if he stayed at Duke, but what was it? It was like wasn't it like his trainer, like the JL3 coach?
Yeah. So the coach of Duke, Jai Lucas, his father founded the AU program Shelton played for.
Yeah. So he is, Henderson, I think you compared him offline to me to Castle, which I think there's definitely shades there. I can see that. There's like 6'5", 6'6", power wing, but also someone who has real ball skills and can really pass. Like he's another one of these like shooting questionable guys who that's going to be an issue for him. But I think he's pretty damn good at like mitigating his shooting weakness. Like there are some guys at this level who's like when teams understand that they can't shoot and they should defend them accordingly, they just kind of fall apart. Henderson is not that way. Like teams in his last, I don't even know Where did he even play high? I don't even know where he played high school.
It was a public high school in Texas. The name's escaping me. I literally just saw a picture of him with the jersey recently.
It was Bel Air High School. I didn't watch any of those games. Like at the highest level against Knight Riders, against EYBL teams, like he was still able to beat guys with timely cuts and transition and offensive rebounds, while also being incredibly skilled and explosive. Well, he's probably like even a worse shooting bet than a guy like Castle. He's, to me, more athletic. Like he is a monstrous downhill athlete who really, I think, can put pressure on the rim from the wing spot from the perimeter in a way that a lot of other guys in this class simply just can't. That's a very valuable trait, along with being, like we said, Henderson's a good passer, good decision maker. He's a menace in transition, just like pushing and also passing the ball. He's also a super high motor guy, like very much kind of, one of the guys we talked about, another one of these like little thing kings. So just like doing a bunch of the little stuff that drafted people are going to love, but also could see him putting up a lot of points in a fairly high usage role, since I think there's a pretty clear path for him to get that kind of usage.
That's going to be a horrific offense in Miami.
Yeah. Also, just going to be obviously has the familiarity with the coach, but like, again, if he was at Duke, he's probably not getting that kind of usage. Like I like Dante Allen, who's also going to freshman going to Miami. I think we both like Dante Allen. They have Trey Donaldson, who's like fine. True Washington, who's like fine. In terms of perimeter players, they have Reno, right?
Oh yeah, Reno. Yes, yeah. So that is probably their only plus offensive player at like a confirmed plus offensive player on that roster. They're probably going to make the biggest leap as far as like national defensive ranking, maybe in like any college database era. Dude, they
were like, so bad last year.
They have so many ass kickers now between all the guys you listed, but I don't know what it looks like offensively. I don't know. I mean, they don't play really. They play Ole Miss. And then you can probably tell I've thought a lot about Miami. I literally watched Shelton Henderson like an hour before we got on this. But
fuck yeah,
they don't play Duke once in the regular season. They have a incredibly easy schedule, and just by merit of the defense and talent, they should make the tournament. Shelton is like, with the Castle comparison, Shelton's a lot more of a forward, whereas I think Castle had more guard skills, more experience running ball screens. But just everything you said to a T, like having just recently watched a game. He's a great offensive rebounder. I watched a game just versus AZ Unity. I was actually tuning in for Brandon McCoy, and he scored legitimately 8 points off of cuts. Like just finding windows to get to the basket. He's explosive 2-foot leaper when he gets there. But yeah, I think if Shelton just makes I don't say marginal, a little more than marginal, but he makes some strides as a shooter. Definitely think he can work his way into draft conversation.
He needs to make He needs to make real progress as a shooter, but he's so good in so many other areas on both sides of the ball. And I'm just willing to bet on that in a situation where I'm not going to go as far to call it a good situation, but one that I think is conducive for his success as a prospect, as a player. Want to guess where Miami ranked in Bartorvik defensive rating last year?
It was in the 300s for sure. It was probably like 315, 320.
It was 323. I'll read you the teams around them. So directly in front of them last year, North Dakota, Louisiana Monroe, Delaware State. Directly below them, Delaware, Southern Indiana, Coastal Carolina, Alabama, A&M. They were, I believe, by far the lowest ranked defense of any power conference.
Yeah. That season went off the rails inside of 5 games.
Yeah. Very fast. Yeah. I was gonna say I'm looking. I don't think there's any even close power conference team. Where is the next one? I am not even seeing anyone come close. And that should tell you the kind of defense that they were working with last year. But as you said, how much better it's going to be this year. And he's someone where, again, ACC, like you said, going to be better, going to have matchups against – are they playing Louisville? I'd hope. I'd play that.
Yeah, I assume they have to play Louisville. I just know that Duke and no Duke. Yeah.
They're going to get Caleb Wilson, who's someone that people are going to want to watch. So he's going to have eyes on him, and I think Shelton is going to surprise people. But anyways, all of the questions we got through, plus a couple bonus ones. Ahmed, I've already taken so much of your time. Thank you so much for joining me.
Always a blast.
By the way, second worst power conference defense, ranked 172nd. Any guesses?
Iowa.
Bingo.
Nice.
Good one. It was in fact Iowa. but anyway,
man. Another one that they went defensive coach. That's interesting.
Man, that's gonna be. I can't wait to watch Sturts next year. It's gonna be so awesome. We didn't talk about Sturts, but he's awesome. Anyways, we could talk for another hour. But Ahmed at Slip the Screen on Twitter, work at Swish Theory. Anything you're working on now? You want to plug anything recent? You want to?
Just keep an eye out for my work with Swish Theory. I think I'm actually going to start a Substack. At least I've been telling myself I was going to, just to put more short form stuff out there. Thoughts on primarily grassroots hoops, but I'm always good to talk some draft stuff. So yeah, that's basically it.
Always love having Ahmed on, as we both talked about, for his very in the weeds grassroots knowledge. I try my best. I'm definitely getting into my Peach Jam AAU watching in the summer, but I can never devote as much time to it as the people who really devote a lot of time to it, which is always impressive to me. But anyways, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment. And if you made it this far, like 2 people might be watching this far? I don't know. But you know what? If you made, let's think of a thing for them to comment. What should they comment if they made it this far?
Shelton Henderson, #1 overall.
Shelton Henderson, #1 overall. So if we see any of those are the real ones. But anyways, thanks y'all, and have a nice day.
Yep. Take it easy.